I got my DNA tested by just giving a bit of saliva to this company known as DNA Fit. They did a full comprehensive test and gave me all of these results. In this video, I'm going to go through those results with you and showcase why some are very interesting, some are not, and how I'm going to change my life based on these results. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to be showcasing the science behind how do these tests actually work, from just taking a bit of your saliva to gaining all of this information that you see. I'll be breaking it down so then you can understand actually how it works, and if you're interested in doing it, you can do, because there's so many sites out there, so many companies out there who can actually do this piece of work. So let's go through my actual DNA Fit test results. So you can see on the screen right now, these are just the different modules or the different sections to my full report. Bearing in mind, remember, all I gave them was a bit of my saliva. They took their DNA and did something known as whole exome sequencing. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the video, but let's just go through what these results actually show. So you can see over here, we've got my genetics, the diet, nutrition, sports and fitness, well-being, stress, pollution, music and dance. You would think, how can you gather all this information just from my saliva? It's a bit nuts, but that's what this video is all about. So I'll be skimming through the results. I'll be also showcasing what they have verified, so what genes they have tested to come to that conclusion and what references they have, just so you can understand the depth and the insight that they go to in order to come to the conclusions that they have, which are in this report. So why don't we just go through each one very quickly and showcase what actually happened. So let's go through diet. These are some of the stuff that I'll be talking about later on in terms of actual how does it work. But what you're interested in is diet. So according to my diet summary, based on my DNA, based on my genes, my optimal diet type is Mediterranean, which is really interesting because I'm a big believer that Mediterranean diet is one of the best overall diets. Again, there's, vegan, ketogenic. I'm not here to discuss which one's useful. Everybody's body type is different. Everybody requires a different set of nutrients, some more favored than others. But for me, I require a Mediterranean diet. And here lies a problem. Now, this might be true, but I don't eat a lot of fish. I don't eat enough fish, and that might be a problem for me later on. So maybe this might be a stepping stone for me to do more in terms of eating fish. I do have omega-3 tablets from Performance Lab. Link is down below. It's its affiliate if you wanted to grab yours. So that's quite interesting. But let's go through the breakdown, actually, the actual breakdown as to what happened. So the first one is alcohol. As you know, I'm Muslim, I don't drink alcohol, so can't really test that, but I'm just going to take his word for it. However, I do drink a lot of coffee, caffeine. And I'll be talking through, I'm showing you this app that comes with this actual test and showing you, how do they come to the notion of you have sensitivity towards caffeine? But it's actually the genes that they test that are responsible for caffeine uptake or something like that. So we'll talk about that later on, so stay tuned. Theophylline, fat sensitivity, high fat sensitivity. And just so we understand how this works, so we've got fat sensitivity high, carbohydrate sensitivity high, and salt sensitivity high. So you're probably wondering, what does that actually mean? Let's go through actually what that means. So I'm going to get my phone. I'm going to open the app. So I don't know if it will, can it show? Yeah, maybe. So this is the app that comes with that you can install to get more information about the report that this generates. So if we then go on to diet, we're going to look at fat, carbohydrate, and salt sensitivity. So if it works, stay tuned. Right, so we talked about fat, carbohydrates, and salt, but let's go in fat sensitivity. What does that actually mean? So you see on the screen, and I'll put this on the screen so you can see. Based on my genetic results, you are likely to have a higher sensitivity to fat. This suggests that you are predisposed to see an impact on your cholesterol based on your fat consumption levels. It is advisable to limit your intake of fat. So this means that if I have X amount of fats compared to an average person, I have a higher sensitivity to either take up those fats, have them potentially be a problem for me if I take on too much. Again, we can discuss about how high fat diet technically isn't a problem. It's about how you have a high fat, and normally when you have a high fat diet, you normally have a high sugar diet, and that can cause, arterial wall damage. I'm not going to go into that today, but I'm just going to talk about these results. So as you can see on the screen, it gives you some information about fats if you're not aware, and the type of fats that I should eat, but then recommendations of what I should potentially do based on these results. So what is good fats, unsaturated, saturated, and these are actually really good information just for you to scroll on an app. Some who might not be from a science background might not know this, And some who do have a science background might have forgotten this. So this is actually really good information for me. But this is the main reason now why I want to show you this app, because okay, it showed me that I have a high sensitivity to the effects of fat. Probably that's a good way to look at it. Here is how it works. So you can see on the screen now the genes that they analyzed for this. So we've tested these genes because they play a certain role in how the body metabolizes fat. And that's the key thing I want you to remember. All of these genes that they test, they're testing them because they have a particular affinity or an effect on the metabolism of something. So they've tested different genes for the carbohydrate metabolism, for salt uptake. And if you have an issue with them, you might be more sensitive or less sensitive to something. So these are the genes that they've tested. And the confidence score is how strong my genes correlate to this characteristic. So right in the middle. And then papers, actual scientific papers based on why they have come to the conclusion that these are the genes in question. So you're like, why do you have references here? They are showing the references to support the notion as to why they are testing these particular genes. Now, the ones I'm looking at, I know for a fact APOA2 is actually very linked to fat metabolism. I know this from my own experience. So that's interesting. Now, I'm not going to do this for every single one, but this, imagine now, all the genes are analyzed for everything you see on the screen that I want to go back to are based on some scientific literature in terms of, okay, these genes are verified to be important for salt, for all the other things that you'll see later on. That's how this test actually works. So just for whilst I'm on the app anyway, let's go through, if it works. My phone is getting old. Let's just look at salt sensitivity. So based on my genetic results, I'm likely to have higher sensitivity to salt. Individuals with higher sensitivity to salt can have an increased risk of blood pressure. So again, the effect salt has on me is greater than the average person. That's the one way to try and understand what this normal and high sensitivity means in this context. And again, recommendation of what I should do, eat less processed foods and stuff like that. And then score, ACE. If you don't know, ACE is angiotensin converting enzyme. Very important in many of the antihypertensive drugs, which are actually called ACE inhibitors. So if you think that this is wishy-washy, no. And there's all sorts of papers verifying that this gene in question that they tested for salt sensitivity is true, is verified. So yeah. Anyway, let's go back to the diet now that you know that this is important. So, going further into the diet summary, higher predisposition for celiac disease. Now, believe it or not, I used to eat a lot of oats when I was younger. When I mean younger, about 10 years ago. But now I can't as much. And it might be because I might have a certain predisposition, which is very interesting. Lactose intolerance, normal. And here's where, again, when I mentioned at the start of the video, these shouldn't be seen as gold standard facts, because I now have a slight intolerance to lactose. So I actually can't have full fat milk because it doesn't really agree with me now. Perhaps because I had too much when I was younger. So that's something to bear in mind. Spice sensitivity, fine. I eat a lot of spice. But here's where it gets another interesting point. Detox. I need an increased need of cruciferous vegetables. I do not eat enough cruciferous vegetables. So I think I need to eat more than I do at the moment. And this is why I'm trying to showcase these results, because they might give me motivation and some evidence-based backing to perhaps change my lifestyle, diet, sports, you'll see later on in other aspects based on this. So yeah. Taste sensitivity, super taster. I agree. I do like a lot of taste. I do not like things that don't taste great, quite obvious. Sweet tooth, high preference. I agree, because I do actually have a sweet tooth. I have a lot of sweets here that I will not eat in between the video, I promise. But I do actually like a lot of sweets. Weight regain, average risk. Interesting. Okay. Moving on, let's go into nutrition. So again, this is based on my genetic testing. What do I need in normal quantities? What might I need in higher quantities? So antioxidants normal, calcium normal, folic acid, iodine. Interesting. Now, you can get iodine from milk, and there are obviously other sorts. Again, trying to supplement any deficiencies, which is interesting. And perhaps I probably need to drink more milk, maybe. Comment down below if any of these relate to you and what you might do, which is interesting. And if you want to subscribe whilst you're there, that'll be great. But moving on, iron, magnesium, omega-3. Again, you've got different omega-3s. And by the way, I am taking supplements because I know, although I have a normal need, I'm not getting anywhere near enough, which is important. And omega-3 EPAs, again, something that I've learned. I know there are different types of omega-3s, but you can see here there are 4 types. There might be more, I'm not sure. Phosphorus, normal needs. Selenium, higher needs. Interesting as to why. When I go to the sports section, I'll open up the app again so you can see, what genes they've potentially tested. But again, back to this, vitamins, vitamin A, normal, vitamin B12. I know for a fact, because I am borderline iron deficient in terms of iron deficient anemia. So this potentially correlates needing more vitamin B12. So that's quite interesting. But if you go further up, my iron needs were normal. So again, right, take these results with a pinch of salt. Vitamin E normal, zinc normal. Okay, vitamin C normal. Vitamin D, surprisingly, I thought I would need higher needs based obviously being based in UK. We don't really get enough vitamin D. Again, that's not to do with my genes, just to do with the environment. But something to keep in mind. Now, sports and fitness. This is something I'm very, very interested in. So based on my genetic testing, my optimal training type is low power, medium endurance, high strength. And this is quite interesting because I actually agree with this. And what I mean, why I'm laughing is, I know in terms of low power, like being explosive and stuff, I'm generally not, right? But in terms of endurance and lasting longer in terms of any kind of stamina events, over the years, I've generally been quite good at that. I used to play football for hours, tennis for hours, although I got a bit fat now because I'm getting a bit older. But generally speaking, generally a lot stronger than I used to be. And then building strength and getting stronger is quite natural for me. I've got to put in the work. So it's interesting that had I not known about this test, I would have said my split is more focused on strength, being fairly good in terms of stamina point of view and endurance, not being very explosive, having that speed and that dash explosive power, which is what the power come from. I know for a fact I'm not. And that's why it's quite interesting that it goes through rowing, weightlifting, CrossFit as suited, types for what I do, which is very interesting. So let's go through actually what it talks about in terms of the breakdown. So you're probably wondering, I'll pull up the app now. I have a low risk of Achilles tendon injury. How does you giving saliva and they testing your genes relate to that? Let's go through that actually. So let's bring up the app again on my phone, if it works, which it does. And then let's go now to sports and fitness. So, risk of Achilles tendon injury. So again, based on I have a low risk, but what's the scientific details? So we've tested your genes in we tested your genes that are associated with genetic tendencies of Achilles tendon injury. These genes play a role in the collagen alpha 1,5 chain. They play a crucial role in the particular collagen that associates with this. So again, 4 out of 5 in terms of confidence scores, and then a few papers to verify why this particular gene of interest and these protein of interest relates to Achilles tendon injury. Now, you're probably wondering, there are more tests needed. Yes, I am not saying that based on this whole exome sequencing or this actual DNA test, that this is completely verified. Yes, you can do other testing and you can do, MRI scans and stuff to verify this. But this gives you potentially an indication or a guideline. Again, not everything's accurate, not everything's set in stone. But it's interesting that looking at certain genes can give you some useful information. That's what I'm interested in from a researcher point of view. Now, on the screen, it says my blood flow higher. I don't know what that means, so I want to find out. And you can find out with me. So, blood flow higher. Based on your genetic results, you're likely to have a higher blood flow capacity. An increase in blood flow results in more oxygen effectively reaching your body's tissue, meaning more nutrients can be carried to your muscles. That's good. And again, scientific details regarding certain enzymes. Again, back to the ACE gene. So that's a good, I feel like Captain America, I've got increased blood flow. And within that, body composition, increased lean body mass. Now, I wish I could just snap my fingers and prove it, but right now, no. But let's see, increased body composition, increased body mass. Right. Based on genetic results, you're likely to have an increased lean body mass, suggesting that you may have a higher energy burn at rest. So basically saying that I have a higher metabolic rate, which means naturally I will perhaps be more lean. I agree with that. The only issue is that it's not my genes, it's my diet at the moment, which isn't great, which perhaps probably doesn't make me look lean. But that's nothing to do with the genetic test. That's just to do with me being lazy. So again, let's just go through more of them. We've got energy, endurance, capacity. Let me just stop the screen recording. We've got endurance capacity, medium, fatigue resistant, medium, heart rate response to exercise. Okay, interesting. Injury risk, average. Lactate production, below average. Now, I think that's related to me having a medium endurance, because if I'm not producing too much lactate compared to the average person, I don't hit fatigue or stress or cramp as often as maybe the average person. And maybe that's why that's linked. Anterior cruciate ligament injury, moderate, fine. Muscle cramps, moderate. VO2 max efficiency, higher. I do want to show this on the app because this is something I'm hoping to do in a video in the next coming months. So stay tuned for that, where I test my VO2 max, and then in a month's time I try to do it again and see if I can improve it. For those who don't know, VO2 max is a really good overall test of your overall fitness and ability to endure stress for a long period of time. Now I'm curious to see how does that actually work. So VO2 max, based on my results, you're likely to have a higher oxygen efficiency level than the average person, meaning you can handle longer duration cardio workouts. Really good, but I do need to test this because I'm very curious myself, especially if I'm going to be playing tennis more, stuff like that. And again, I'll put on the screen a little definition of what the VO2 max is and why I'm very keen to test it, and would urge any of you to test it as well, because it's interesting to realize what your level is in terms of a fitness point of view. Let's go further down. So just to summarize, power capacity low, I can agree with that. Recovery efficiency normal, great. Strength profile high, trying to be. Water loss above average. Okay, interesting. Let's move on now to well-being. Appetite control normal, bone mineral density normal, okay. Stretch factor risk average. Inflammatory response normal, that's life longevity, great, would like it to be higher. Metabolic response normal, and tendency for mosquito bites normal. But let's just go through on the app, what does this actually mean? So we're looking at well-being, and we go to tendency for mosquito bites, because I'm quite curious what gene are you testing. It says here, we've tested the genes known to be associated with tendency for being bitten by mosquitoes. So these are tons of genes, interestingly enough. There are some papers, again, not that many, so we don't know how true this might be. But from what I can understand just off the dome right now, there might be certain genes related to certain proteins that might make you more susceptible or more likely to be bitten by mosquitoes. Okay, not too sure. Now looking at stress and sleep. Sleep apnea, I do snore, I've been told. So average risk, probably fine. Sleep depth, sleep depth, average sleep, I don't know what that means, I might check on the app. Sleep duration, 7 to 9 hours. I agree, I do generally need now at least 8 hours of sleep. And if I'm working till late, I don't really get up till a bit later, because I struggle now not to have enough sleep. Before, when I was doing my PhD, yeah, you know, living off like 2-3 hours sleep, again, not good for you. Not saying it is, but I do feel I am an easy sleeper now, and I am a night owl. This is why I'm very interested to showcase these results, because I 100% agree with this, because I don't like generally working in the morning. I do like being more creative and doing kind of deep work at night. Again, I do kind of fall asleep quite a lot, you know, on the sofa. But here's an interesting one. Stress tolerance, warrior. I agree. I've been through a lot. Everyone's been through a lot. But I'm still here making videos, you know, growing my channel and stuff like that. Even despite all the issues I went in the PhD and all the things you guys perhaps don't know about, because it might be too personal, stuff like that. I know for a fact, I know the stress I've been through, and to be able to be smiling still here, perhaps might be a testament. And it might be attributed to how I observe and take in stress. So why don't we check the app now, what does this actually mean? So stress tolerance, warrior. based on the details. They've tested the genes that are known to influence how your brain produces or breaks down the stress hormone cortisol and stress-related chemicals dopamine and serotonin. So these are the genes in question, and again, quite a few papers to verify that these genes in question are related to the stress in this way. And if you were to have an issue or alteration on the genes, you might be more susceptible or you might be more tolerable to something like this, in this case stress. But again, I just want to hit home the notion of there's genes in my body, everybody's body, that code for certain proteins and in this case certain hormones that are related to a certain function. If there's some alteration in my genes that are good or bad, in simple terms, it might influence how easily my hormones are secreted or not secreted, and that can influence how I deal with stress. So this is kind of a layman term understanding of how these results can give you an insight as to how your body is actually working. So let's go back to said report. Sleep movement, sleep quality. I'm not going to go, like I said, go into everything because it'd be a super long video. Ancestry, I'm quite interested in this. I have a lot of South Asian in me. Great. Interestingly, 9% Eastern European. You wouldn't think that. No African in me, even though my heritage technically is Africa, but again, from a genetic point of view, I don't have that. No East Asian, no Middle Eastern, no Southeast Asian. Interesting. So, skin. Let's go through skin. And first, skin age younger. Well, I hope that continues because so far, so good. Let's see. But here's where I don't agree with the next one. Acne risk. I used to get a lot of acne around my nose. Like, there used to be like volcanoes and craters around my nose, and sometimes still are, even though you might not be able to see. But here's where I disagree. Again, there might be some certain genes that they haven't tested, or again, it's not just about genes, there are all other things at play that could influence how these genes are occurred. And that's the science of epigenetics. There'll be a whole separate video of how you have a genetic code which you don't change generally unless you have, ionizing radiation and chemicals that can mutate. But there are things that can influence how easily accessible your DNA is, and that can influence how your genes are expressed. So you're not affecting the gene, you're affecting how easily it's accessed or how easily it can be limited. And that's the notion of epigenetics. If you want me to make a video about that, comment down below and I will. So we've got stretch marks, keloid scars, skin bruising tendency, interesting, skin hydration ability, skin lightening, cool. So again, I'm not going to go into all the details for these, but it's interesting that your DNA can, if analyzed through the sequencing, can give you some insights as to what your body might be doing or might be predisposed to, might be more susceptible to, or stuff like this. So again, wrinkle formation risk average. Right, physical traits. Facial body hair, likely normal. Nope, I'm a gorilla. I have too much hair, I'm not going to go into detail, but that, not right. Pain sensitivity, likely high. Yeah, depends on the pain, I would say. Body odor, like normal, yeah. I have a big phobia about smell, by the way. I can't even leave the house without smelling decent. So that, I feel I don't really have a body odor in that sense. Phonetic sneeze reflex, interesting. I don't know what that is. I might check the app for this as well. Smell sensitivity, like 100%. I'm like a bloodhound. I can smell certain scents, sorry, like 6 miles away. It's bad. Like, so I have a sensitivity to egg. I can smell egg on anything. Like, this is an egg detector. Trust me, it's nuts. But hyperhidrosis, normal, fine. Persistent thinness, eye color like brown. It is earwax, likely dry. Yeah, I used to have earwax issues when I was younger. But not. Hair color likely black. It's getting grey, but we can agree with it now. Waist circumference likely average at the moment. Remains to be seen. But yeah, gender traits, let's see. Behavioural traits. Alcohol addiction, who knows. Altruism, yeah, again, just gonna sound arrogant now, but I try to be a good person. Food addiction, more likely, yeah, I would say. Obsession with washing and cleaning. How does that work? I'm interested. Let's check the app. Behavioural traits. Alright, so what gene is related to more likely to washing and cleaning? We tested these genes due to the influence on the genetic expression of this trait. Okay, certain, so there might be certain genes related to somebody's behavioral pattern and related to perhaps OCD. So maybe that's why washing cleaning might be related to OCD. So it could be potentially that. Going back, I did mention earlier that I was going to check phenotypic sneeze reflex. So why don't we just do that now? So that is in physical traits. Let's go to physical traits. Phenotypic sneeze reflex. So, based on genetics, you are likely to sneeze when your eyes are exposed to bright light. Less likely. Interesting. Because I actually do. So when it's really bright and I look up, I start sneezing. So, interesting as to why it's done that. But yeah, there you go. Let's move on now to where were we? You can see how comprehensive this report is just based on a bit of my saliva. Personality trait, agreeableness. Yeah, I would probably think I'm more on the compassionate side, but again, that can be changed based on how you're feeling on the day. Conscientiousness. Try spelling that like 2 o'clock in the morning. Likely balanced. Yeah, I would say, because there are moments where I'm disciplined and there are moments where I do like to be flexible. Extroversion, likely reserved. No, I would disagree with that. Likely confident and calm. Yeah, but again, these are subjective. You could base on the day. Openness, likely balance. Okay, fine. But let's just check that up in terms of what genes are related to this notion. So let's get the old phone out, get it recording so you can actually see what I'm doing. Personality traits. So let's go to conscientiousness. Based on your results, you'll likely have a balanced personality. But what's genes? So we've tested these genes based on the influence on this particular trait. Again, probably from a cognitive psychology point of view, there are certain genes that are related to invoking these emotions, perhaps. But again, I'm not a geneticist. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to showcase my results and give my feedback on whether I agree with it or not. But again, there are some papers on the screen, so if you wanted to check them out, feel free. But yeah, again, molecular psychiatry. So there might be certain molecules in high amounts can influence a person's behavior, right? Because we know for a fact that if you certain hormones in high levels can change a person's behavior, right? They can influence how a person is. So perhaps maybe that's where these potential results are coming from. Who knows? Right, let's go a bit further down. Oh, scroll down, success traits, okay. Intelligent quotient, IQ. No, it should be given. I'm joking. I just work hard, if I'm honest. I'm not. Everybody's skilled in different ways. One thing I do try to do, and maybe it shows up in this report, but one thing I try to do is have a good work ethic. But emotional quotient, normal. Entrepreneurial tendency, normal. I'll say maybe slightly normal because I'm becoming more of, or having that more entrepreneurial spirit. But yeah, creativity, normal. Education, attainment, normal. Information processing power, gifted. Let's go through that. Memory skills, gifted. Mathematical skills, normal. Language ability, normal. I do think I genuinely have a decent memory. I don't know if it's gifted though, but let's see what genes are in question between this information processing power. Is it like I'm a M2 Ultra chip? For those who know about Apple stuff, you'll understand that joke. If you don't worry. Probably a bad joke anyway. But information processing power, let's see. So we went through success traits. Here we go. So information processing power. Based on results, you have a predisposition to a fast information processing speed. Other environmental factors such as school, home, and parenting also play a major role. Just like a computer receives and stores information, so do our minds. So it's kind of saying that I have a higher tendency to process information quicker, which is interesting. Again, it goes through some papers related to biological psychology and this ability to process information. And the other one was memory skills. Let's see what it's talking about in regards to memory skills. Again, you have higher memory ability. Let's put that to the test one day. That could be a challenge. How good my memory is based on these results. Let's see. And fast KD2 is related to this notion of memory skills. Again, it might be inversely related, to Alzheimer's and stuff like that. So let's see. Again, so many papers related to this as well. But I think that will be it for now in terms of going through results, because I'm now very keen on talking about how does this test actually work. So let's do that now. So you can see on the screen when you get this report, it gives you some information so you can understand how does it actually work. But this is the notion, it's called whole exome sequencing. And the concept is that we have so many genes in our body and they're responsible for certain proteins we have in our body. So the proteins that make up our eye color, the proteins that make up our skin, the proteins that make up certain things called enzymes, which help to break down certain things in our body. So obviously these genes code for all sorts of different proteins, which kind of make up a large part of our body and the building blocks to cause the function in our body, right? The bones, the cells, the skin, all sorts, even the neurons. All of these require proteins, right? It's kind of the building blocks to make up things. But in our genetic code, in our DNA strand, there are kind of two types of bits in the code. There are exons and introns. Now, exons are the ones that have coding to code for something like a certain protein to then be, made and be utilized in our body. Introns don't have any code of interest, which is why it's called whole exome. Exome meaning the whole makeup of all of your exons in your DNA. Now, not to get too scientific, it analyzes these coding parts of your DNA, which code for the proteins that can, influence how you behave and how you're more susceptible. So, in summary, analyzing these exons are in your DNA and analyzing the thousands of different genes that you've seen when I was going through the report earlier. These, if they are altered in some way, or if you have, more of these genes or less, in simple terms, that can influence your personality, your behavioral traits, your certain predispositions. Because you got to remember, for example, let's say somebody has a higher percentage, high affinity to certain genes, or certain genes are more altered, or certain genes, are not in perhaps high amounts or easily accessed. And in short, you got to remember that these exons are, massive codes, like, paragraphs of, imagine like a whole page of letters. And you know that a fully functioning exon or fully functioning part of the genetic code is seen as this. And then they'll look at your exon related to this particular part of your DNA and see are there any errors. Are there less errors? Okay, that means you might be functioning normal. Or there's more errors in this particular section of your DNA, in this particular section of the exon that it's altered. There's a bit of a slight mutation, not a humongous mutation, but a slight mutation means you might be more susceptible to something, or you have an increased tolerance of something. That's how this test works. So in summary, I gave them my saliva, they extracted the DNA out from there, they then looked at the DNA, which is composed of exons and introns, so coding parts that code for proteins and non-coding parts. They looked at all the exons that essentially make up the exome, and they looked at how very, very, very close they looked at all of these exons and all of these, codes. Again, that's where all the genes are, and look at all the different genes that are related to all the different things we saw earlier and see, are there any typos, again using that paragraph and that page of words analogy, are there any issues here? If so, you might be more susceptible. And here's what I mentioned about the caveat, you might be more susceptible, because although your genes might be at play and might be something, it is your environment that can also play a very, very big role. There's something known as the Knudsen two-hit hypothesis, which is something I'll always remember, something that's hit home when I was younger, where the first hit might be a genetic predisposition to something, but ultimately it is the second hit, which is your environmental trigger, that can initiate or cause something. Somebody who might have a higher predisposition for diabetes, if the environment is the opposite, where it's super clean, super likely, they might not actually get diabetes. But somebody who has a low risk of diabetes potentially, if the environment is so extreme and the diet is so in favor against diabetes, that second hit might be powerful enough for them to potentially, develop their condition. And this is the notion to remember, that although there are a lot of things that said that I had increased risk or decreased risk, it can greatly be affected, as you saw with the processing power or my brain's ability to process information. That might be good in terms of my genetic sequence, but if my schooling, how I've been brought up, stuff like that, wasn't in favor, I'm not potentially going to see those rewards or see those issues. And vice versa, the other thing also plays a role. I might be susceptible to something, but if my diet and my lifestyle counteracts that, I might not potentially develop that condition. So that's something to bear in mind. So that was a very long-winded video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you stayed towards the end, thank you so much. Do leave a double thumbs up emoji at the bottom just to let me know that you've stayed for this long, and I greatly appreciate it. I know it was longer than your usual transmission on this YouTube channel, but I hope that was valuable and insightful to give you an idea of the power of research and science, to give you an idea of whole exome sequencing, so the ability to really analyze your DNA to infer some useful information. Was that in action? And there are many companies, again, I'm not sponsored or being paid by DNA Fit. I just did my test because I was curious, and I thought in this new kind of format of me sharing experiments and things and sharing the results, I wanted to share this. And like you saw, this was done many years ago, and I was just kind of sat on the results. So I thought, why not share it? It might entice someone new to maybe check and get your DNA tested. Again, I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice or anything like that. This is just me trying out a test online and seeing what the results are. So I'll leave the links to all the different kind of companies who do this now, that you can test out if you wanted to, if you're curious. But I thought that was an interesting observation, interesting little experiment. Comment down below what you thought, and if you want me to do more things like this where I test like sports performance aspects in person, where I go to like a sports lab and test my VO2 max and see if I can improve it. That's something I'm very keen to do. However, this video has been very long. Thank you so much for staying tuned. Do subscribe if you want to, and if you want to see when I did this smaller test from DNA Fit many years ago, you'll see I probably look so different, probably a couple of years old. I'll leave that here if you were interested in the smaller test version of this, just so you can actually compare if you wanted to. But I'll let you crack on. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day, morning, afternoon or evening. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.